Good morning, good afternoon and good evening, and welcome to video number 2. Today what we're going to be talking about is physical praise and how we do it with our dogs. This is probably one of the most important ones in my personal life with Poppy, my German Shepherd, only for the sheer fact that this is probably her number one priority in regards to praise. I think if we're talking about the other types of praise, like we have done in previous videos, I think this one for Poppy and myself is probably up there. The reason why I'm going through this today is because what I find with owners is they come to me with dog's got anxiety, dog jumps up, and other various problems that people go wrong and right within their average day. And what I wanted to do today was just do a little video, maybe 10-15 minutes long, on how we can kind of try and correct that, how we can sort that, and my views, my opinions on why things go wrong and why people's households probably get exaggerated and the problems that they go through. Physical praise as an entirety, if we're speaking this as a big box of kind of information and knowledge, it isn't just touching. It's not just eye contact. Physical praise is all about how you interact with your dog. So it could be if you go for runs with your dog and you do stuff physically. Now I'm hoping you'll walk your dogs. Now that can be seen as physical praise. Dog works hard, gets the treat, gets the toy, gets everything, and then goes for a walk afterwards. I know that's something that we used to use in the military. So stuff like running, rough play, love and affection, even just sitting and holding your dog's paw could be seen as physical praise. And this is the reason why I want to go through with it today. So physical praise, when it comes to it, is anything physical that comes between myself to my dog. So human to dog. So when we're now talking about it, the whole element, if we take this as 100% as a control, what we're now talking about is we only own half. Now I'm going to tell you to why now. So when you touch your dog, you're physically praising your dog. Therefore, every time you touch your dog, you're then physically praising. So let this sink in. So now look at now go back to or revert back to your good and bad list, or you think about the good things and bad things about your dog. When you're touching your dog and a bad behaviour is happening, whether it be jumping up, whether it be pulling on lead, whether it be barking or snapping at another dog, howling at thunder, whatever the behaviour, and you are touching that dog whilst the behaviour is going on, there is a very, very high chance that you could be exaggerating the behaviour or making it worse because you are praising that dog physically for the behaviour that's going on at the time. So everything from human to dog physically would now suggest that it's now physical praise. So behaviour irrelevant. When it now comes to that physical praise element and you are touching them, you are rewarding them, behaviour irrelevant. Which resonates in a lot of people. They kind of think, when my dog was being anxious, or when my dog was showing signs of being a bit anti towards another dog, they can now see that their behaviour or their actions may have fueled at one point their dog's behaviour. So physical praise is one of the hardest ones to get right because we only own half. Now, if we're now losing 50%, we now need to find out where we've lost it. So when it now comes up, human to dog, we're touching them. So what do they do to touch us? Well, it's easy. Muzzle on, paw on, lean, lick, sit on. I've heard of some owners going to sleep with their dogs above their head, eating off fine china, all the rest of that physical stuff. So now think about what your dog does to you physically, would now suggest that when they are touching you, they are rewarding themselves for their behaviour. Now, I'm not saying every time that this is this is the paramount, but just think about the last time your dog barked at another dog and you sat there stroking it, because in your human mind we're relaxing and chilling, but it actually did nothing. Think about the time that your dog is now jumping up. That dog is now self-rewarding, and this is why the behaviour is now going around in circles. So if you imagine a pendulum, that pendulum is only going to carry on going because it's got momentum. So when you're now looking at dog's behaviour and we're fueling it with praise, we now need to consider consider when we're now rolling with the pendulum. So the minute you touch or you fuel it, the circle gets quicker. When it now comes to now taking off, the dog now isn't being praised for it and is now on their own to then try and work themselves out. So at this point, I am not saying you can never touch your dog again. I just need you to be mindful of where and when you are touching your dog, because what normally happens is if a behaviour is inset and has been going for a while, we now need to look at the factors that are going in amongst this, and then what will happen, we will then come to the root problem and say, well, actually, if I hadn't touched or if I hadn't spoken in a high pitch, what would now probably happen is the dog probably wouldn't have done it so badly. So physical praise now is everything from rough play to running to sitting there smoothing or whatever. When the dog is now touching you, say for example you're sat on the sofa, dog starts going nuts at the window because somebody's walked past with another dog, and the dog is sat on you or standing on you, there is a high chance that a dog is being rewarded by you because you're touching him, saying no, get down, whatever you need, whatever you'd be saying at the time, or the dog is sat on you and therefore protecting, being rewarded for that behaviour. When it comes to these individual scenarios, I try and stay away from them and then just look at their dog's behaviour or your behaviour as a whole, because what we tend to do is get lost in scenario, and physical praise is one of the easiest ways that we can get lost with it. So dogs with high anxiety, whether it be through stress of another position or anxiety from a different behaviour, whether it be the postman or whether it be thunder or whatever, 9 times out of 10, a dog will learn quickest when he's not being praised for the wrong behaviour. And therefore we can then pick up that behaviour and say, well, actually, no, this is not what we're after. Please stop. But when you do these right behaviours, this is when we then add in the praise. Now, if you're already saying don't do something whilst touching, how confusing is that going to be? I think when it comes to the nervous dogs and everything else, the worst thing that I see a lot is when we've got a small breed or a toy breed, and the owner lets the dog go out to the end of the lead, bark, 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 new stranger, etc., etc. Pretty much what most toy breeds were bred for at some point. We were talking about the Chihuahua, were bred for sitting on kind of the richer people's laps, and then to alert the owner when someone comes in the palace. We now look at that in today's modern kind of society, would now suggest that the dog is now alerting for the presence. The ankle biters, whatever you want to call it, rah, 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 dog goes nuts. At that point, the owner goes, "Oh, sorry about that," picks dog up. What's then happening? Physical praise then suggests every time dog barks, I'm then going to get praised for it. Again, it's just one of those really, really tough things, because I get so many owners say to me, well, he's only small, so I can just pick him up and walk off with him. But that behaviour isn't making things any better. So what I'm going to try and get people to stop doing, pick their dogs up, unless it's grave, unless it's an emergency, unless it's whatever, try and keep all 4 paws on the floor, because essentially what you're probably doing is praising for that unwanted behaviour, and this is where it kind of needs to stop. So jumping up, for example, is one of the most common ones that I find that physical praise rewards constantly. Jumping up is a really tough one, and what I'd probably say to most people is the dog is self-rewarding to start with. Hi, I'm happy to see you. I do this to my owner, so I'm going to jump up, which is fine if you're, kind of built like me, big thick idiot, 6'4", that probably can take a Chihuahua jumping up at my ankles. But imagine, I don't know, Beryl, 87, she's on warfarin because of an underlying health condition. If a dog was to jump up on Beryl, she'd probably scratch her shins and probably get her kind of bleeding more than what she would. So when it comes to jumping up, whoever the dog is jumping up on now becomes the trainer, right? Because essentially the dog that's jumping is then the one that's causing the behaviour, and therefore because you're being touched, that behaviour goes around in circles. So just be aware of that, especially with jumping up. My advice would be if and where you can, have the dog on lead and just prevent that jump. So, encouraging the sit wait behaviour and focus on, a bit of patience and a bit of You know, just to sit and wait, I suppose, a bit of focus control. I first learnt this, and one of the reasons why I go through this is because, like I said at the beginning, it's very prevalent. But the reason how I learnt this was actually a bit of a fluke, to be honest. And this is what got my brain kind of ticking in. I first learnt this when my dog wasn't searching very well in Afghanistan, and I realised that it was the external touches that when he was out searching, he used to come back quicker to me because he knew he'd get some sort of physical praise. So what I tried to do was send him off on a different position or make him come back in a different position, and 9 times out of 10 that kept his nose down because he realised that he wasn't going to get praised for finding nothing. I only wanted him to find something, and then he'd come back, and then I'd praise him. So to kind of variable that up, what I wanted to do was ensure that he, in his mind, didn't know that he was coming back for physical praise rather than finding whatever we kind of put him out for. So in a not so roundabout way, I've taken out the explosive threat from Afghanistan and then replaced it with a household environment. You know, those things can really kind of take into place, especially when you're talking about kind of kids and elderly. They're probably the worst, categorically the worst for external praise. Children don't know what don't necessarily know what they're doing. Elderly would be, oh my god, you know, I haven't seen a dog like this for a while, or I had one back in the 60s, and please can you let me touch? Of course, this energetic puppy's then trying to jump up and say hello to everybody. Not exactly the best when you've got a 4-month-old boxer, which then turns into a 4-year-old boxer, which then still knows how to jump. Physical praise is one of the hardest to get wrong. Wrong is the hardest to get right because we only own 50%. So maybe in a rule of percentage, the last one, so verbal praise was 100% in our control because it comes from us. Whereas physical praise, we lose that 50%, and it's the hardest one to get right because there are external sources that can confuse these lines. And especially when it comes to physical praise, I'm very physical with my dog, and I know I probably get the physical praise wrong most days, and therefore some of the behaviours that my dog has, you know, they're probably exaggerated at some point. But the external forces, you know, with Poppy, like my mother, for example, she's awful for it. When she's whinging and whining, she's all over it. Oh my god, Pops, I haven't seen you in a while. Fantastic. But just get Pops to sit and then give her all the praise you want. When it comes to this 50-50 element, dog's in half the control, you're in half the control. So providing that we can turn around and say, well, best case scenario, I'm only ever in half the control. As long as you're able to monitor and function with that 50%, they're great. At this point, I'm not saying you can no longer touch your dog. All I'm saying is just be mindful that when you touch them, you are praising them. When they are touching you, they are praising themselves. So just be mindful of that, and I'm sure you won't go far wrong. If there's anything in this video that hasn't resonated, or you'd like me to explain it a little bit more, then please just get in touch. All the kind of the bits and pieces will be in the link afterwards. But this should be your number 2 of many videos, and what I try to do is try and keep them all in line. So here's to physical praise. The one before was verbal praise. The next one will hopefully be toys and treats. So I look forward to seeing you soon. I might even break those down into 2. Yeah. Okay. Nice seeing you guys. Cheers for listening, and welcome.